So
and that's the tough part for
yeah.
people. It's they know what they have in the A, where you are, what you have. It's getting to point B. That's the tough part because people have to go through turbulent. When I say turbulent waters, or the gap, or the unknown, to get to that place, and that it can be scary for a lot of people, and that's why they never let go of the A. No matter what the situation.
It's the comfort zone, it's familiar.
Exactly.
Even if you feel it's not going to last, it's easier just to almost pretend and be in denial that this is going to go on forever. But the time, there's that saying that the time to fix the roof is not when it's raining out, but on a sunny day. And the other expression I always love, the Confucius saying that the best time to plant a tree was 20 years ago, but the second best time is today. So at some point, you need to, using the journey analogy, is you need to pull over to the side of the road occasionally, because if you don't check to see do we have enough water and oil and everything else, what happens? You run out of gas on the side of a road, and then what? You're stuck. So it's kind of like people in a dead-end job, or with the writings on the wall saying I need to start thinking about what may go wrong. Waiting until things go wrong is too late.
Exactly, and so many people do that. They wait, and then, then they try to catch up, or then they try to have a miracle happen, and there's not always a miracle in today's business landscape anymore.
We say the only constant is change. So if you assume there's another saying, we throw a lot of sayings here tonight, but in an ever-changing world, if you're standing still, you're falling behind. Because everyone else is moving past you, and we need to be moving and be proactive in creating our future. There's a book called Control Your Destiny, or Someone Else Will, and that's the case. It's like, do you want to wait until you're fired or laid off, or do you want to take charge of your future and start preparing and being proactive in your life?
So yes, Todd has also written a book.
Yes, my first one. Yes,
his first book, in conjunction with Deborah Grace and Regal.
Yes.
And it's What Would Your Baseball Ask? And I am not a baseball person, but
the subtitle
is Business Coaching Wisdom from the Ball Field.
Right.
So, might I?
Yeah, sure. So the key is, one of the things is we talk about all the different metaphors and analogies, and those of us who love baseball or sports tend to gravitate towards using those types of analogies and metaphors. And as it talks about in the front of the book, is we use them all the time, whether you say that idea came out of left field, or I really struck out in that presentation, or you really hit a home run with that proposal. So we used that already. So what we did is we took that idea. Deborah had written a book called What Would Your Blender Ask, about coaching wisdom from the kitchen. Example being, your kitchen knife would ask, how do you keep your skills sharp? So I took the metaphor of an implement in the kitchen. So I got the idea of course, baseball, and I came up and I co-wrote this with her, and I kind of stole her idea from the kitchen and said, and I'm not much of a kitchen person, but
you're a baseball person.
So if you just want to throw one out there, we use an example.
I love it. It's the relief pitcher wants to know, how are you going to keep things within reach?
Okay. So in a baseball game, the relief pitcher's job is to come in and not give up any more runs and keep the score as close as possible. So similarly, transferring that to your life or your business world, how are you going to keep things within reach? For example, how are you going to not let things slip out of, get out of control? Say things are on a path towards going bad. Say you're running out of money or something like that. How are you going to cut the losses? And so it could mean different things to different people, but what the book does is uses metaphors as a catalyst to growth and development.
Right.
And,
I have to read one more.
Okay.
I love this one. The first baseman wants to know, what would be a stretch for you?
Yeah, and I'm a first base. I play first base on my softball team, so I'm glad you picked that out, because that's one of my favorites. So, but like, how would you respond to that? How would you use that with a coaching client? That question of what would be a stretch for you?
Yeah, what would be a stretch for you? If somebody were, again, I'll make it up, were going for a job interview, how could they really stretch themselves to show up in that particular interview? What would they be willing to do? A question that I ask a lot of my clients, especially when they're considering changing jobs, what do you bring to the party? For them to be really specific about what do they bring. Not just go in for the interview, but to talk about it, as you said, in a story. And what impact did they have on their job? How did that relate to a return on their investment within the company?
Yeah.
So you want to let people know not only your resume and what you did, but how you did and what was the impact, so the interviewer gets to see.
Yeah, they want to know your real life. How are you going to translate your real life, your strengths from your previous job into this new role? Because it's not like you're going to be doing the exact same job, so you need to be able to translate that. And the whole idea of transferable skills is key. And the whole idea of behavioral interviewing is not necessarily just tell me about asking someone how they did something in the past, but thinking about the future as well. So if you said to someone, tell me about a time when you faced a similar challenge, tell me how you handled it, because anyone could just make up how I would handle it, but if you ask someone in terms of behavioral interviewing how you did handle it, that's a reflection of their success. And even if they didn't succeed, what did you learn from it? How are you going to take that learning? And when people ask you strengths and weaknesses, not everything always went perfectly. You want to talk about some failures, but what did you gain from it, and how did that help you grow and develop?
And especially today, I think, even though another stretch would be, what are you willing to do in your job that takes you out of your comfort zone? Because most people try, especially in today's world, to play it safe. Well, if I do my job and I do a good job and I kind of keep my head down, I'll do a good job. But what are you willing to do to really push your envelope, even though it might not work out, but you're showing someone, I'm willing to stretch, I'm willing to do something outside of my comfort zone.
Because without that, there's just stagnation. If you just keep doing the same way all the time, you're not going to grow and develop. And mistakes are going to happen. And when we do management leadership training and coaching, we talk about that. We use the quote from Einstein that anyone who has never made a mistake has never tried anything new. So as a manager, how are you going to set your people up for success, knowing that they may not always succeed 100% the first time, but as a manager, how are you going to be there as a coach? How are you going to be there to support them and provide the resources and help them overcome obstacles? Because it's a learning curve in terms of anything you do in life, but especially in a new hire or a new challenge, you need to set people up for success, but knowing that it doesn't always work out perfectly the first time.
So when is the book going to be out?
Well, it's self-published, and we ordered a limited number of copies just as a first printing, but we're getting a lot of great feedback on it. And what we're probably going to do is launch it in the spring when baseball season starts again. So by then, we will, when I do the session in May, hopefully we'll have a lot more copies printed up, and they'll be available. So right now, it's just a limited number for friends and family, and you're a friend, and so that's your copy to keep. So
give me a lot of interesting.
And you'll learn something about baseball too. You'll be able to speak the language of baseball.
I know a little bit about baseball. I don't follow it a little bit, but I know a little bit.
Okay, great. Yeah, it's universal. It's part of our American.
It's like apple pie, baseball and apple pie, as they say. So what else do you have in your bag?
Well, one of the other. Well, a lot of times we talk about visual thinking. We talk about visual communication, which involves. Sometimes we have people napkin sketching. Grab a napkin and draw something out. For example, say someone's dealing with a problem with their manager, and you may say, all right, think of your last 2 or 3 managers, write their names down, and now draw a picture of each of them. And if they start drawing like devil's horns and a pitchfork, and you have 3 of those in a row, you know that this person. So one of the things with coaching, we're trying to focus on the present and the future, but sometimes it's good to look at trends and patterns, and ask the person, you have this problem with your manager. Have you ever had the same problem with a previous manager? And if this person says, I've had this problem with every manager I've ever had, then maybe it's not the manager, maybe it's how you deal with authority, maybe it's, every manager always says, I came in late. Well, maybe part of it is you need to establish expectations about what's expected from your manager. And so it's a good way to get people thinking about themselves and their situation. So that's one example of drawing something out. Another example is having people, we talked about that before, creating a vision for yourself of the future and cut out pictures from a magazine and create a collage of how you envision your life. Because if you can see it, you're more likely to, what's this, another saying, only those who can see the invisible can do the impossible.
Okay.
Only those who can see the invisible can do the. So you need to have a vision of what's possible, even if you're the only one who could see it, because that's the only way you're going to turn that vision into a reality. And then as a manager and leader, you need to communicate that vision to the people around you so that they can see it as well. And that's one of the big things that we teach managers and leaders to do, is to use visualization, storytelling to inspire the troops and to get people to see your vision so that you're all on the same page and more likely to make it real.
and then I think I told you at dinner that I have a client that we did a visualization, and when we dissected it a little bit, she talked about that she kind of fell into, or she wound up in this open field in the Midwest somewhere. And one of the things that came to me as an intuition was that whole field of dreams, and build it and they will come. And when we started looking at maybe this could be a canvas for her to now put together where she wants to go, and take pictures, take words. And it was very powerful for her, because she started to say, you know what, things I wanted to do out the window, I don't want that anymore. What started to come to the forefront with her were things that really meant something. So it might not be her next career, but it's a future for her to look at and to start kind of navigating her way towards that.
So you used a baseball analogy or metaphor, and a movie analogy at the same time.
But Field of Dreams.
And they couldn't create the baseball field until they got rid of all the corn in that area. So that's like, what do you need to get rid of to create a space for that growth? You can't fill up a cup that's already full. So it's like, how do you clear out a space for growth and development? And that's one of the most challenging things, to clear out the time and that space in your own mind, getting rid of some of those barriers and obstacles that stand in the way.
Two things can't occupy the same space. Another little ditty.
We're just throwing out every quote and every expression that we could think of. Yes.
So, and that's true. Something has to move for something else to occupy the space. And being able to kind of sweep out the old, if you will, to have new and more interesting and things that really support who you are today, rather than things that don't support you anymore. And I think a lot of us hold on to things that we think support us today. And it's getting rid of them and looking at what we can put in that really will move us in the direction we want to go.
So another metaphor analogy that we used, and again we showed some pictures, we talked about drawing, but you can also use physical objects. And one of the ones that we use, that my brother and I use when we're doing training or even coaching, is we have this jumbo remote control. And when I first got this, my wife said, "I hope we're not going to use this, because that's ridiculous." But one of the things that we do is, the metaphor of the remote control is, when you're coaching someone, is say someone says something and you say metaphorically, "I'd like to hit the pause button for a second. Let's hit the rewind and go back for a second. Tell me more about what you were just, or give me an example of that." Or sometimes you talk about something in training and people have already talked about it before, whatever, you say, can we just hit the fast forward button and just leapfrog over this piece? So it becomes part of the language. So if you imagine that you have a remote control, one of the things that we say when we're doing training is, you can hit the pause button, you can go back, you can fast forward, but you can't change the channel to another training program. You got to stay here, and hopefully you won't hit the sleep button and take a snooze. But it's another great metaphor, and it's a prop that just makes it fun. And part of that one of the things that we talked about is making things fun, even serious stuff.
And I agree. And with that note, I didn't realize the time has
started already. Wow.
Go. So at this point, I'm going to hit we need to wrap it up
button. All right. It does fly by fast.
Really wonderful having you. I'm looking forward to seeing you in May and doing the presentation.
Thank you.
And your book, and what's your website, very quickly?
The website, let me just hold the sign up. Again, as a visual person, I could say it out loud. I don't know if it's visible, but it's Todd, Todd.Cherches, Cherches, at bigbluegumball.com. So just send me an email, and I'm happy to connect with me on LinkedIn or whatever, and happy to talk to anyone who has an interest in visual thinking and visual communication. Maybe I'll see you at a VisThink event or an ICF event.
That was it.